Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Lewandowski. I am the Library Consultant for Small Business Development and Technology at the New Jersey State Library. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're joined by Bill Carlson from Info Group, who is going to be talking to us about ReferenceUSA, one of our most popular business resources that's available through Jersey Clicks for New Jersey residents. This database is such a great tool for business owners, entrepreneurs, job seekers, anyone to find information about businesses, consumer information, New Jersey or U.S. residents information. So Bill is going to walk us through everything. Keep in mind that the chat and the Q&A are open for any questions or comments. Make sure that you type them in. You can type them in at any point, and then when we pause, we'll be able to answer them. And if there's anything else that you need us to know, just feel free to go ahead and put it in there. So I am going to turn it over to Bill now.
Thank you, Andrea. And Naomi, thanks to you as well. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Carlson. Work for ReferenceUSA, just celebrated last month during the pandemic, my 12th year with Info Group, which is my parent company. And so today we wanted to really do a thorough overview of ReferenceUSA, and I'll provide you with some case examples of how I've been able to assist patrons with the use of the database, and some of those patrons are certainly certainly government agencies will utilize the database through different locations, and they'll call up periodically to ask questions about searches that they're doing. So I can certainly address or speak to any of those types of folks. I know that chambers of commerce love the database. The small business development centers, SCORE agencies, that they use the database. I have a number of great relationships with individuals from both of those SBA lines. So certainly feel free to ask questions as we go through this. Just a couple of housekeeping items first. We're looking at my access to the Omaha Public Library. Obviously, if we were going through Jersey Clicks, it would have the state library information here. It helps us if we get a call from a patron and they say, gosh, I'm not able to do a search. I'll ask them if they see that logo. So it's kind of nice when we have that on there so that I can quickly identify if they're in or not. The ReferenceUSA logo in the upper left-hand corner, home key. So if you need to switch up from one module to the next, just select the home key and it'll bring you back here. We do have under our About Us a great 3.5 minute little video on our data and how we collect that data. So if you want to take some time to just click on the About Us and watch that, you could certainly do so. I won't show it today, but it's there. And then also under the Contact Us, we take calls from businesses or patrons Monday through Friday. Our hours of operation are 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and that's Central Standard Time. We do have an email address there under the Contact Us as well that folks could utilize. So if you can't answer a question or you would like them to get some more assistance, certainly let them know that they can reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. We also have our Learning Center, and I like to point out we do webinars every Tuesday and Thursday, and those topics vary, so you can certainly direct any patron to those. We do have some short clips, 2 to 3 minutes in length, under the video library that are specifically addressing some of the various tools that can be used within the database. And then there are some 30 and 60 minute canned webinars that are in there as well. And then, of course, we have some training guides that would be a great, if it would be a great resource if somebody would appreciate being able to have that information in front of them. They could certainly print that off, or they can just pull up another screen and have it there for them. So know that that's all available. And I do like to point out, because so often people will come to the database they want to go to and they don't necessarily scroll all the way down. I do like to point out the personalized accounts that they can create. It's not a shortcut. Sometimes patrons think that because they've created this personal account that it becomes a shortcut for them to get to the Reference USA database, but it is not. It's a long cut. They would still log in through the library's website, and once they've registered using whatever email address they want and whatever they're going to use for a password, they can save their searches, and virtually all of these modules can be saved except for the jobs and internships. This module, we weren't in our negotiations with Indeed.com, that's who provides us with that information. We weren't allowed to be able to give that save search feature. So we did come to some conclusion with them, and decided that it would be okay to allow patrons to email the results to themselves. So if they do a search in here, they just can't save it under their personal account, but they can certainly email that to themselves. All these other modules they can certainly save though. So with that, I do like to mention the schedule for the updating of our information. If you're not aware, we're located in our corporate office is down in Dallas, but the lion's share of the employees are all in Omaha. And we have about 350 folks that are responsible for making call verifications to these businesses once a year. And so we do that all out of Omaha. And we verify the name of the business, their location, the owner or manager, and that title. We ask how many employees they have. In general, when it comes to the employment question, about 72% of those businesses will give us an exact number of employees. Those that do not, once we learn the type of business they're in, we look at their peers and then we overlay a range. So some of you may have pulled up business records that had an exact number versus those that have a range of 1 to 4, 5 to 9, something like that. When you see that range, just know that when we made that verification phone call, that information was not provided to us. But the US business database, this is being updated every week. So as we learn any information about a business through our verification process, maybe it was through our relationship with the United States Postal Service, we are fully licensed to bump our database up against the national change of address. So we may have learned about a business that has moved locations, and we have since updated that, and then we push that information live every Thursday into Friday morning. So when somebody saves a search in their personal account, it's not saving the actual business records or the standard white page records. It's saving the steps that they use to build that search. And then we present them with the latest and greatest information related to that query that they had made earlier. So this is being updated every week. Our historical business database, that information is being updated at the end of every year. Canadian businesses, that's updated once a month. Our jobs and internships, this is every night. So Indeed.com sends us a feed, and we take that information and we match the job opening against a business record for that job opening and make both available to that patron that is seeking employment opportunities. So this gets updated every night. Our U.S. new business filings, this is coming in, the main source of that information is coming in through the Secretary of State's office as it relates to those new business filings. Sometimes we'll learn about new businesses through utility hookups. In any case, what we do is we house them here until we're able to get that fully verified, and then we make a complete record and put that in the US business database. I do like to note, we will keep that rather vague record in here for historical purposes up to 2 years, because we do have entities that want to be able to look at some of that new business information and see the types of businesses that are being filed for. So we do have that in there for 2 years, but this is being updated every week. Our US healthcare every month, standard white pages every month, consumer lifestyles every month, and the same is true with the Canadian white pages. Our US new movers, new homeowners, great module. That's getting updated every week. So that's information that we're also obtaining from our relationship with the USPS with that national change of address. So you can certainly look at any particular community, and I'll show you how that works, but you could look at any particular community or area within a community. Maybe you wanted to look around a library branch. You could do that. You could put in that physical address, and then you could find all the people that are new based on time frames that are available. And it could be as recent as this week or as old as within the last year. So know that this is being pushed live every week. I'll go ahead and launch one of the databases. Might as well start with the US business because that's the one that tends to get the majority of the attention. But there are certainly lots of options for these other modules as well, depending on the need of the patron. I'll just open that up. We're always going to come to our quick search page. That's great for finding maybe one company. Maybe somebody just wants some company information for one particular business, and that's it. If that's as simple as it needs to be for them, they just type in the name of that company, and then they select view results, and they're ready to go with that one record. They could also use the first name, last name option to try and find an executive, maybe an executive that they used to sell products to or work with has moved on to another company and they're not certain where. They could try and find them with that last name search. Can certainly look at all businesses within any given city or state and even do a reverse phone number lookup. I instruct when I take calls from patrons, and they're easy to recognize right off the bat that they're new to the database and they're wanting to create a list of businesses that they're going to sell something to or market to. I always ask them to tell me about who their really good customers are, and then I'll ask them, do you know that business's primary line of business? In other words, think about Walmart. Walmart's a great example. Their primary line of business is that of groceries, but we also know that they have clothing, they have automotive, they have pharmacy, they have all those others, other businesses under that umbrella. So I always ask them, what's their primary line of business? And oftentimes they won't necessarily be certain. So I'll have them look up that one company by name, identify, and you may or may not be familiar with the SIC codes. That's the Standard Industry Classification Code. It's a coding system that's been around since the 40s. In fact, it was retired some number of years ago, but we've kept it active because so many people like using it because it's so granular compared to what it was replaced with, which were the NAICS codes. That's the North American Industrial Classification System. That code, those codes aren't nearly as granular as the SIC code. So I'll have them put in that really good customer and go into that record to take a look at that code. And I'll show you where those are at. I'm going to do a simple search right now, though. And I'll just do Omaha. I don't know if anybody's been to Omaha. If not, once things get open, certainly come and enjoy some time here. We have a couple of great steakhouses. There's a gentleman that you may have heard of by the name of Warren Buffett. We could gosh, if you let me know you're coming, I'll make plans to drive by his house with you. That's all the closer we can get, though. So I'm going to look up Omaha, Nebraska, and this is going to show me all businesses across my city. What I want to show you is, it's one thing to say, gosh, they've got some 29,000 businesses across their city. But if you wanted to understand the makeup of my city and those businesses that are the largest of businesses across the area, a lot of times people think of insurance with Omaha, and so they'll say insurance or meat packing, that kind of stuff. I can use my charts feature and it will lay out the 7 types of industries across my community. So I'm going to select charts. It automatically goes to that SIC code. I could switch it up to NAICS codes if I wanted to. There's my, in this case, SIC code for all physicians and surgeons. So people go, well, why are physicians and surgeons showing up as number 1? It's because they're all 1099 guys and gals, and they are their own business. So there are, nearly 4,000 of them, followed by restaurants, attorneys, nurse practitioners, insurance, dentists, and look at there. We even have, and you may have noticed this in searches you've done, we do have automated teller machines. So I'll show you how you could technically omit any of these or all of these and you'd get a new top 7. I'll show you how anything can be omitted from a search as well. Oftentimes people will want to omit automated tellers or red boxes. I get a more traditional report by all the different SIC codes that make up these communities that make up these businesses across my community. So if I wanted to get to this group of schools, of which there are 217, I could click on that and just get to that group of those types of businesses. We still consider schools a business, even though they're not for profit. And we do have nonprofits in here as well. That's often a question. I also can either print this information or make it part of a PowerPoint presentation. So no, you can do that. I could also change it up to, for example, number of employees. So if I wanted to get a sense, we've all heard on the news, especially pandemic, the effect that this has had on all industries, but certainly those smaller businesses. I can quickly identify the makeup based on the number of employees that businesses employ across my community. So I can select that and look at there. 1 to 4 employees is the highest at almost 60% across my entire community. And of course, that's all industries. I haven't left anything out. So certainly 1 to 4 is the top vote getter, followed by 5 to 9, the 10 to 19, you get the idea. If you scroll down, it will give you some of those larger employers along with those various ranges. So no, I can switch it up to any of these other options as well. And if I didn't want the pie chart, I could drop this on a bar chart if that would be more appealing to someone. So know that you can utilize that. We used it just looking at my entire community, but you can do it based on the industry or industries. Maybe somebody's looking at two or 3 or 4 different industries. I could be utilizing that information to look at those as well. I'm going to skip out of here before I open up any records because I want to do another search. And most of the time, people are skipping or bypassing the quick search and they're going right to advanced search. By the way, additional filters goes to the same place. And all these things that I'm showing you, the majority of these tools, like the charts, is available in most of the modules, not in every one of them. So if you don't see it, it's not broken. It just doesn't exist in that particular module. I do like to point out all of the different queries that you could make using this information here. might as well start off with the top one being company name. The difference between the company name that's listed here and what we saw under quick search where we could pull up one company is this option would allow me to put in the companies that I want to see. So if IBM were a company that I wanted to look at, I could add that to my list. And then I could add in, maybe I want to look at another type of company that isn't in the same industry. I can create my own customized list of businesses, maybe 3 or 4 or 6, however many I want to look at, and I could create my own custom list that way. So that is available. Otherwise, I tell patrons, we'll always give you company names, so you don't need to check this box at all. We'll always give you this executive information. However, some users want to only talk to, for example, owners of a business. So if that were the case, I could drive in just those records that have an owner present and forego all the other ones. Or maybe I would be willing to speak with an owner and a manager. If that were the case, I could get records that only have an owner or a manager. In some cases, they might have both, and then I'd have to make my decision about which one I was going to speak to first. But no, you can create this any way you want to, and there is quite a list of executives, as you'll notice going through here. So if I wanted to add directors or HR personnel, whatever the need might be, I could drive in those results. And it reduces the total number of records that I'm about to see. So know that you can do any of those, but otherwise we'll always give you that information. I'll come back to the keyword and the industry here in a moment. We've got these various geography selects. If patrons have an issue, it's sometimes that they think, well, I want a particular city and state, and I also want that city and state with this particular zip code, and they'll confuse the database by putting in both of those selections, and they'll end up somewhere in Alaska. So I always instruct them, obviously the zip code overrides the city and state. So if they truly want to get to the zip code, then they should just use that search feature and not the city and the zip code. But we'll always give that information, and I'll show you this map tool. This can be very valuable depending on the types of searches that people need to be able to do. We'll always give this phone information, but maybe I need to see records that have an 800 number associated with them. If that's the case, I can drive in those results. Well, otherwise, we'll always give that phone information. We'll always give this number of employees and the sales volumes. We learned a long time ago, you don't ask a small business what their sales volume is annually and not have that phone call somehow magically be cut short. So we don't ask that information. We actually had an economist here on staff, and she and her staff will put together an algorithm that populates that sales volume. So it's an estimation. Unless it's a publicly traded company, then we'll capture it from their 10Ks. We'll always provide this ownership information, but maybe my search, I want to look at businesses with a single location. If those were the types of businesses I wanted to, in other words, I want to get away from those franchise places, I could select my single location and only get the output for those. So know that that's available. Same thing with home-based businesses. If you check nothing, you'll always get home-based businesses in your results. But maybe you're working with the Chamber of Commerce and they've got a question about the number of home-based businesses in a particular area. You can either include or exclude those home-based businesses from a search. So know that you could certainly utilize that information. So we'll always provide that. The government information, I've been getting a lot of calls and we've been seeing a lot more interest in the government information as of late, as you can imagine. So all you have to do is drive in that government office and then identify, do you want federal, state, county or municipal. So if somebody were looking for the county health department, they would make that their selection and then drive in whatever city that might be in, or if they don't know the city, they could do the county selection. So know that they can get to that information really pretty quick. We'll always provide this financial information. Business expenditures, if you're used to the database, this used to not be queryable, but it is now. So if I needed to find out businesses that were spending X amount on accounting services, I could drive in just those records of those people that are spending maybe $10,000 to $25,000 annually on accounting services. Maybe that's going to be the audience I'm going to try and attract some business from. So know that that's available. These special selects, some of these might come in handy. You know, I like to show folks those newer businesses in their community, and the best way to do that is years in the database. And then you just select the last year. And that way you'll get the last year's worth of those businesses that we've added to that particular community in that time frame. Great way to look at those new businesses in the area. Maybe I'm going to do a search, and that search is going to include professionals, whether that be doctors or dentists or attorneys, CPAs. If I were in charge of maybe doing a mailer and I was going to try and blanket a particular area, if I wanted to reduce some of my costs associated with that mailer, I could, instead of reaching out to every attorney in that office, I could change this from all to only one, and that way I could get that piece of mail to that primary attorney or that doc or that CPA, and then obviously reduce the cost associated with that mailing, because I wouldn't be mailing to 16 attorneys, I'd only be mailing to one. So know that that's available. And then I mentioned those omissions. Here in Omaha, we know that there were a lot of those ATMs. So if I didn't want ATMs in my output, I could certainly look for those ATMs. It'll give me that SIC code and the description. So here's the SIC code and the description for all those automated teller machines. I can add that to my selected box and then put in whatever geography I want to look at, and I'd be able to exclude those from my output. So know that anything can be excluded, including previously saved searches. So if I did, let's say that I did a search and I had 1,000 records, maybe that 1,000 records included or encompassed 3 or 4 different types of industries. And I came back to that search 2 months later, that would mean that there were 8 new updates to that particular search potentially. And if that were the case, that 1,000 records could grow to 1,020 because we've added maybe some more businesses in that area, or you know, the opposite scenario, maybe some of those businesses we've learned have closed. And so now that they've closed, we've moved them out of that verified universe, because that's what we always check first. Whenever I'm in the quick search, that's all I'm going to see are verifieds. Not that the unverifieds aren't valuable. There could be some businesses that we've not had success getting in front of or getting a hold of, but maybe you know in your community, maybe you'd find some businesses that are still in fact in business that are listed under the unverified. It could be a matter of they've moved and we didn't know about their move. They've got a new phone number. We didn't know about that new phone number. Maybe when they registered their business, they used a home landline, and now they're operating their business using a cell phone, and we didn't get that number. So there's lots of different reasons why businesses could fall into this unverified universe. And of course, closed is pretty self-explanatory. So I'm just going to do a simple search, and I'm going to use a keyword search. The major industry group, these are all SIC codes. And as you've noticed on those codes, they're 6 digits in length, but they start with a factor of 2, and then you add 2 more and 2 additional, which we've done. I'm going to look at restaurants. I'm just going to go and look at restaurants across my county. Obviously, we could be doing this anywhere in the United States. I'll pull up Nebraska. I know you're gonna think, gosh, I should go to Nebraska. Looks like they've got some great restaurants. Oops, but I can't put in. I want my Douglas, not Omaha. So I've got my county in there, and I could be adding. Here in Omaha, we're right across the river from Iowa. So if I wanted to include the county that's adjacent to us in Iowa, I could certainly do that and add Potawatomi, say that 3 times really fast. I could add them to my list and then see the results for both of those counties. So no, I get to drive this any way I want. You could even, instead of maybe doing the Iowa Potawatomi, maybe I only wanted to see the county for Douglas, Nebraska, but then I also wanted to drive in the city that's across the river. I could put in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and then just get the city and my county results. So you can shape this any way you need to. We're going to keep it simple, and we're just going to do Douglas County, Nebraska, all restaurants that are verified. So there's my 29,000. Now I've got a total of, I did not select my restaurants. Shame on me. There's that misclick that I mentioned that I sometimes do. So here's my SIC code for all restaurants, and I have a total across my county of 1,209. Now notice I'm looking at all SIC codes. If I switch this up to only primary, watch what it does to my, now I've got 887. So what it did was it removed those types of businesses, like for example, a bowling alley that has a small restaurant in it, or a convenience store that has a little restaurant in it, or a movie theater that offers a dining experience. We've gotten rid of all of those. That's why that number has dropped, because we're only looking at those businesses that are truly restaurants. Walmarts would fall out of that because they have a restaurant in them, right? So they're not in my group. I'm going to view those results. And since I just showed you this chart feature when we were looking at the entire community, and we're only looking at one particular SIC code, so it's going to chart it a little bit differently. It's not going to give me the breakdown by the top 7 SIC codes, because there aren't 7 SIC codes by which to calculate. So it goes to the next best option, and that's the breakdown of the city. So it's going to give me the top 7 cities in my county and how many records are affiliated with those particular cities. Of course, I get that report down below as well. I can print this off or make it part of a PowerPoint presentation. But let's look at that employment number now as it relates to just restaurants. Does 1 to 4 still come up as the lion's share of those types of businesses that employ 1 to 4 employees, or does another number come up? Let's take a look. So notice now it's 5 to 9. You don't find 1 to 4 until you're 4th in line here at a little over 7%. So 40% of all restaurants in Omaha employ 5 to 9 employees, followed by that 20 to 49, 10 to 19, etc. So it really is a neat way to look at either an industry, maybe several industries, or like I showed you in that first example, across an entire community. If you work with economic developments, chambers of commerce, they love this kind of view. So certainly show this to them, and of course, let them know about these options. I'm going to go back to my results. As you know, certainly your patrons are allowed to download records. In this particular library situation, they get to download 150. In New Jersey, you all get to download 250. So that would equal 10 of these pages, because there's 25 records per page here. So if I wanted to start downloading this information and I want to take everything, I don't want to cherry pick, I would select this empty box right next to company name, and it puts a check mark in all of these boxes on this page. Then I just need to advance to page 2, repeat that step. You kind of get the idea here. I only get 6 pages through the Omaha Public Library, or 150 records. So there's my 150. I would stop here and then select my download. Maybe I want to print it off too. That's fine if they want to do that. Can certainly download that. Notice the very first option that comes up is this comma delimited. It still drops it into a form of Excel. It is label printer friendly. So that's why I always encourage folks, or I try and find out, do you plan on making mailing labels? Because if you do, this is what you definitely want to use. Depending on what you want, you can either do the summary, which would include this information, plus the name of that owner or manager, what their title is, number of employees, sales volumes, the primary SIC code that they fall under, etc. So they get a lot of information through that. And then it's just a matter of download. The one thing I would say is that all of my downloaded pages in Excel are static. So if they're going to take a lot of records, I encourage them open up their own version of Excel and then do a copy and paste from mine into theirs. And then they can simply minimize theirs, close mine, and it literally brings them back to this page. All they have to do is select the word back to get back to that, in this case, the 6th page that I left off on. But now they've got to deselect all these check marks. Instead of doing it page by page like we did to get to this point, simply revise the search. It doesn't forget how you got there. Then you view your results. All those check marks are cleared out. I can come back up to this page box and simply type in the page that I left off on and hit enter, and I'm ready to go with another group of, in this case, 150, in your case, 250. So that'd be 10 pages. So I would want to obviously make this page 11 and start getting my additional records. And they can do that. There's no limit to how many of those they can do. So know that that's all available. I can also, it's one thing to say, gosh, there's 887 results here, but I don't have a true sense of what this looks like across my county. Well, we can solve that by using this heat map. This density map will show you the breakdown as it relates to all of those restaurants across town. So where you see these red blotches, that isn't a severe thunderstorm over Omaha. That is in fact a lot of restaurants in those areas. Where it's more yellow, like here, there are fewer restaurants in that area. And then of course green, there's even that much less as it relates to restaurants in those areas. So I can print this off and make this part of my presentation, and we're just looking at a single county. We could be looking at an entire state or a region, maybe several counties. Again, based on what we need, I can make this available in any form based on the geography, and then I could take this into my lender and let my lender know about the fact that this is what I have to sell, and this is the target audience that I intend to sell to. I know because I've had a lot of lenders that have attended programs that I've done back in the day when we could travel and go out in person, and they love this kind of insight. Of course, if I come down here, I'm going to see that breakdown by the top 50 zip codes across the county. And if I wanted to get to this group of 48, I could click to get there. So it just depends on what I need to be able to do. And notice it does mention up here that if I change the zoom level on my map to where there's fewer than 300 records, this is what you would see happen. And I think I'm going to need one more click. So then it will start populating by pinpoint all of those locations. Where you see a plus symbol, it simply means that there's more than one location there. And you can click on it and you see that particular one followed by the next one. And if I didn't know where this Olive Garden was at in this universe, I can just click on that name and it will take me to that Olive Garden location. So I can get to that. Just depends on what I need to be able to do. If I wanted to click on this name, I could see that record as well. So know that I can employ this heat map in a variety of situations. Obviously, I'm just looking at location. I could change it up to sales volumes or even number of employees. I'm going to go back to my results because I do want to show you, and I noticed this on page 2. I want to show you this corporate tree structure. It always defaults to that corporate tree. I could change it up to any of these other options. If I wanted to know the titles for all of these folks, I could change that up to title and get that information real quick. However, I'll stick with the corporate tree in this example and show you this. And I'll go with this Arby's. The up arrow will take me to the subsidiary and just that one record. If I choose the entire organizational chart, it will show me everything. So some of you may have known, but some of you may not have known that actually Arby's is owned by this private equity firm out of Atlanta, Georgia, Work Capital Group. So, and as it notes here, there's a legend that runs across the top here. So if I needed to know what this PV stood for, I quickly have that ability to identify, oh, that's a private company. And by the way, if there were a subsidiary of a foreign parent, that would be as far as we would go. We don't go overseas to that ultimate parent. We stop at the US border. If I wanted to see these other subsidiaries, it's as simple as scrolling down, and there they are. I'm sure that you recognize some of these businesses. Somehow my car seems to drive all by itself to this location. But a lot of these are familiar. Hardee's, Jamba Juice, Jimmy John's, Massage Envy, I think is in here. Yeah. They're in there. This school is here. Sonic Corporation. If I wanted to get to these Sonic records, I could click on this SU with this plus symbol, and it will open up then that category as it relates to all those locations. So no, I can get to a lot of information relatively easily with this. And speaking of that, of course, I could print this off or download this information. But I want to open up this Arby's record. Every record, if you've never seen the database, this is how every record is going to be laid out. It'll always give you this location information first. It'll also include some web addresses or the social links that they might use. By the way, this is all queryable, so if I only wanted to see restaurants that had a website or restaurants that used Facebook, I could drive in just those results. So I'm always going to have this location information first, followed by the job listings through Indeed. There's that corporate tree inside the record. So if I needed to get to that from in here, I could certainly do so. I have my industry profile. So there's that SIC code for all restaurants. And if I'm going to, maybe this record, maybe I pulled this record up because this is that really good business that I've worked with. I'm just going to jot this number down, forget the dash, just the 6 numbers. And then I can use that in that keyword search field where I put in restaurants, and I could search for that really for more opportunities like my really good customer in whatever geography I wanted to look at. So know that that's there. Of course, the NAICS codes is listed there. We have a business profile in this case, so I always encourage folks that are doing any kind of research, whether it's for sales purposes or not, they should certainly take in this information. If you're a job seeker, this is great information to have for that interview that they might end up with. We do have Google Maps embedded in here, so that's listed. And of course, the business demographics. So when we called this business in May of this year, so we'll call them in May of next year. When we called them in May, they told us they had 26 employees. Now, what we don't do is we don't ask them how many of them are full-time versus part-time. But this number comes into play because as part of that algorithm that our economist and her staff put together, that directly impacts this location sales volume. Because remember, that's only reported when it's public. So this is a private company, so we're not going to, and some private companies do report that and we'll grab their information, but in many cases they do not. So we've got that information there. Again, the parent company, we've got their EIN number in this particular case. The IUSA number, that's our numbering system, kind of like a DUNS number for this particular record. Any business or anyone can buy a business's credit history, and that's through Experian, as it notes in this example. So when you launch that, it would take you into then being able to see the options that Experian offers for a fee to be able to get access to that business's credit history. Andrea, did you have a credit card number? We could give this a try?
Nice try.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought I'd ask. So know that that can be accessed, and some people might want to do this because maybe they're thinking about investing in a business, or perhaps they're planning on buying a business and they'd like to get a view before perhaps involving attorneys. You could certainly do that. We'll have that management directory. Obviously, this isn't 100% of fill. But in those cases, obviously, where it's blank, we asked the question, they just chose not to provide that. Company news, we get that through Bing, and it's updated as Bing provides us with insights. So this one was, what's today? Today's the 27th, so yeah, yesterday. It's possible we could come back to this same record this evening and find it already updated again. So it's updates as we learn about these things with the news. Stock data, there isn't any because it's not publicly traded. Otherwise, we'd have some insights there. We have that business expenditure information. And again, this is modeled data based on the type of business. There are a number of factors based on type of business, how long they've been in business, how many employees they have, where they're physically in business at, etc. So that's what the economist and her staff work on. Then we have a little bit of historical data, followed by the historical records. So if I wanted to, without launching the US Historical Business Database, I could come into this Arby's record and take a look at this from 2009, if that's what I'd like to do. So know that you can certainly do that. We do track address changes on here, and we would track phone number changes and even that executive information. UCC filing. So if someone had taken out a loan and they put up some form of collateral, that would be captured here. None in this case. Nearby businesses, because Oh, but in this case, we don't like it. I have a feeling that loader is not working. That happened to me earlier, and I reported, yeah, the loader isn't working for the nearby businesses, but we have the latitude and longitude for all of these businesses in the background. And what the nearby businesses will do, it'll simply populate anybody and everybody that's around that particular business. And it might go out a block or so. It just depends on how densely populated that area might be. And then, of course, the competitors are just, in this case, other restaurants. So that's the record in its totality. Any questions about the steps that I took to get here or any of the information that I've shown you to this point?
So actually, we do have a couple questions specifically about how this information can help job seekers. So I know that there is the job seeker portion in Reference USA, but even the business search is useful. So would you be able to share some information about that?
Exactly. So, I just looked up restaurants. Let's say that I'm a cook, which I am. I am finding out in this time of pandemic, I am not a cook, but I try. If I'm looking and I want to just do some one-off searches for businesses that I know of, either that or I want to look in a particular neighborhood for restaurants and see if they're doing any hiring, I could certainly do that. And then I can find those job openings right here. So not only can I learn about the business itself and who owns this business, how big of business this really is, I can learn all of that information. Plus, I can obviously learn about the job opening itself. So I have access to the job opening information and what would be expected of me in this particular role and being able to, of course, apply for it. And if a patron already has access to Indeed and they've set up their own login information, they can still use that through us as well to apply for those jobs. So I get all of this great information from Indeed, but then I also get the information about the company itself. So that's how it would be used for job seekers. And I'll show you some of those searches when we pull up the jobs module. Other questions?
Great. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and either put them into the chat or the Q&A boxes, and we will make sure that you get answers.
You bet.
But for job seekers, I would also add that even knowing, depending on your field, even knowing the availability of Reference USA is a skill, since there might be people who would use this as part of their job or might be doing some prospecting. They might be trying to find sales leads. So even knowing how to use Reference USA might be something that they could share in an interview or use in their cover letter or something that might give them a leg up.
Absolutely, depending on what their role is going to be. Yeah. You know what, even if I were a cook, let's say this was a mom and pop restaurant, I would come into Reference USA when I had time to pull my boss aside, and I would go into the new movers and I would say, look at all of these new people around how are we going to reach out to these people to let them know that we're here?
That's a good point.
Yes.
And there are a couple of questions about downloading search results. So specifically, Vera's asking about copying to Excel or not, checked boxes unchecked. So if you could just go through how to download again.
You bet. So let's go to, I'll show you two ways because patrons will truly do this. I hear this and work with this nearly every day. Some patrons want all records that are on each of the pages. Those are the easiest ones because they just come up to the box next to company name here and put a check mark in there. It grabs all the records on that page. And then my job becomes advancing from page 1 to 2 and repeating that step. And they can do that, in your case, 10 times for 10 pages. In this library's case, it's only 6. So once they've reached their maximum, which I've done here, then they simply come up here to download. They can leave it in comma delimited. And if they just want this summary information, this is what that would look like. So I'm opening up my, and I'll pull this across for you here as soon as it decides to populate for me. Wow, my Excel must have taken the holiday.
And you might have to reshare your screen or change what you're, oh, nope, it's popping up.
Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what they're going to get in a summary report. Of course, they can manipulate these cells once they're all done, but they're going to get this information, and so it'll be that company name, that executive's information, this address information, credit score, the executive gender, their title, their fax number if there are any of those. There's that IUSA number, so that's our number. The location size with employees and sales volumes, phone number. There's that primary SIC code. It's for restaurants. And then there's a secondary for restaurants as well. So that's all they're going to get. And it's as simple as going, if they're going to take from my static page, because I can't keep adding, I can't scroll down here to the bottom and keep adding. All these pages are static. You just bring your mouse up into the upper left-hand corner here and do a copy and paste from here into your own version of Excel, and then they can keep adding to it. And they can do that as much as they need. So this is 150 records. If I've completed my copy and paste, I would minimize mine, then close this guy up entirely, and it brings you, don't say thank you. It'll bring you back here, and then it's as simple as selecting the word back, because now you've got to get a new group of pages. It leaves you on page 6. Easiest way to get rid of all of these check marks versus doing it page by page is revise search, then view your results again. I'm now back on page 1. All the check marks are gone. And then in my case here, I have to go to 7. You go to 11 and hit enter and then start all over again, selecting these boxes. So that's one way to download. And again, there's no limit. You can do this as many times as you need to get the records that you need to get. The other way that people often will do this, and I better go back and deselect this real quick. I'll revise my search and view my results. Another way that people can do this, and this is where we sometimes get those phone calls, because it's unfortunately, it doesn't describe the process well down here. If I want to cherry pick, and I'm sure that when the programmers first put this together, they weren't even thinking about cherry picking. If I wanted this record and this record and this record, by the way, I don't think you all have Amigos. This is a great restaurant for bad food though. And this one, and I want this record, and I want this record. I can keep doing that, but now my quantity of 250 goes out the window, and what comes into play is the number of pages. So you all in New Jersey can download 10 pages. So now that I'm cherry picking, I still need to stop at at the 10th page and do my download, even though it may only consist of 50 records, because the threshold becomes 250 or 10 pages, whichever comes first. So once they've done that and they've cherry picked and they've gotten to that page 10, they would just do their download, select whatever they're going to select for their option, do that download, and then they'll come back and they have to remember that they left off on page 10 and revise the search to get rid of all those check marks, view their results, and then go back to page 11 to start cherry picking some more. Does that make sense, that cherry picking business?
One thing to clarify, so in New Jersey, we have 100 downloads per search, and remotely.
Is that internal or external?
Remotely for
Okay.
External, 250 for internal.
Okay, so it's reverse. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. So in any case, if it's 100 for external, then it's 4 pages of that, and then they would do their download and come back to page 5. But does that cherry picking make sense, how that threshold works? So if it's 100, it's 4 pages. Even if they haven't gotten to 100 records, they don't want to go beyond that 4th page before they do their download.
Okay, that's good to know.
And nothing, well, it's not like they're going to get electrocuted or shocked or anything. What will happen, though, is they'll get locked out for like 20 minutes. So when I get those kind of phone calls, I ask them if they drink coffee and offer to get them a cup. So know that I can download as many records as I need to in that bulk number, as it applies to internal or external downloading. Or I can print that information, and print would simply be the, once I've selected whatever records I want, and I still have that same threshold, then I can view what I'm about to print and open that PDF. And there's some people like this, it's just as simple for them because they still have the phone numbers there. So just depends on how they want to do it. So know that that is certainly available. And the same thing applies with getting rid of the check marks. I would still want to revise search and get rid of all those check marks. Other questions? If not, I want to show you another tool that can be employed not only in the business database, but in a number of these. Let's do this. Let's throw in some other filters. I'm going to throw in number of employees. So I'm going to say, show me that 5 to 9, 10 to 19, and 20 to 49. And instead of using the county selection, I'm going to remove that. I'll leave restaurants simply because I know that there's going to be enough numbers. Let's also do web addresses. So only companies that have a web address. And then I'm going to open up my map. So when using the map tool, it's imperative that you make all your other selections on this left-hand column first before you deploy it. And then I would open my map. I could put in a physical address in this zoom to in the upper left-hand corner here. I could put in a physical address, including a city and state. I could put in a county and state, a zip code, just depends on what I want to be able to do. I'll just put in my zip code and say go. So it's going to immediately jump to that zip centroid in this particular map view. And then I'll go back up to this left-hand corner, and I have all of these various tools available to me. I can draw my own shape. I can use a true radius. I have some predetermined boundary selections, and I can even create a drive route. And I like to use the drive route option, especially for those patrons who might be using the database as a tool by which to find employment opportunities. They could put in where they would pick up the bus at and where they would be willing to travel to on the bus, and it will create that drive route and then map all of the locations along that. So that could be an awfully useful tool for them as well. And it does work, by the way, on transit or on rail as well. So I'm going to draw my shape in this example, and let's, just for the heck of it, let's say that I'm only interested in this particular area, which is not defined necessarily by a boundary. And to start this, I just did a single click, and then to change direction, it's another single click. It's kind of like Etch-a-Sketch, if you remember that game. And you can see I'm doing a lot of single clicks to kind of follow the curve of the road here. And I'll just double click it to finish it. And then it will calculate how many businesses match my criteria that are in that shape. So in this case, I have 14. And if I want to see just those 14 results, I simply come up here and say done in the upper right-hand corner, and then I view my results, and I've got those 14 there. But I'm not quite done yet. I have some other tools here. I can also use this true radius. So I click on it, and then it's a matter of clicking, as it notes here, click at the center point of wherever you want to begin at, and then use your mouse to drag it away. And it will say how far out you've gone in that lower right-hand corner. So you can see I'm out to almost a mile now, followed by, there's my 2 miles, etc. So if I want to go out, I'll just go out, heck, I'll go out 6 miles. So in 6 mile radius, there are 462, in this case, restaurants that have web addresses that employ a certain number of employees in that radius. And if I've realized something as I'm looking at this, you know what? I've made a bit of a mistake here, and I don't want to have to redo the radius, so I'm just going to cut it out this way. I'm going to draw my own shape now again, and let's say that I don't want to include this La Vista area. I'll double click to finish it. There are 24 results out of this 462 that are in this area. I can double click in this new area, and then it will ask me if I want to exclude those results. And I'll say, okay. So that's going to be excluded from my 462 so that I'll get a cleaner list of businesses. I helped a gentleman who was with the Small Business Development Center, and he was putting together a project using this tool, and had attended a training that I had done, but couldn't quite remember how to do this exclusion part. So I walked him through how to do it as I'm driving down the interstate. And I should have probably asked the question first, but I asked him after we were all done what we just got through excluding. And it was 2 cemeteries. His customer was very superstitious and didn't want the cemeteries included in that shape information. So he met his customers' expectations. So if that's all I needed, I would say done, and then I would view those results. You can see that it's already reduced my number by that 24. So that's a really cool tool to have available. And I'm going to delete this guy. But first, let's recenter you. Come back here. I'm going to delete these guys and show you these boundary selects. So I have these various boundary selections. Could be it'll always start as large as the state, and it could get as narrow as a neighborhood. Let's do this. I'm going to kind of center my map here a little bit, and we'll do the zip codes. So I'll overlay the area's zip codes, and maybe I want to look at these particular zip codes for whatever reason. Maybe it's because it's along this interstate system. And I want to compare which of the zip codes in that area have the most opportunities for me. Well, that's clear. This one is certainly the top vote getter with 56 of those businesses, followed by this one with 46. So if I wanted to look at this, maybe I'm selling insurance. Maybe I'm selling some kind of product that restaurants would want. Maybe I'm selling shelving. Who knows what it could be. I want to start and be able to go to those areas that have the most opportunity for me. Maybe these records are a result of records of businesses, in this case restaurants, that make X amount in terms of sales. Maybe that's my driver. I get to decide what it's going to look like. So if that's all I need, again, I would simply say done here and then view my results, and I'd have all of those 180 available to me. So now I can do all of that. And I received this call. I'll show you this example. This gentleman he was looking for businesses that do really one thing, and that's manufacture or remanufacture skid pallets. And he was calling from a town up in Wisconsin, and he was planning on driving this between towns on this interstate system. And he had attended an earlier training and remembered something about the drive route, but wanted some help with that. So we just pulled up this option. And then in his case, you could put in a physical address here, but in his case, he just gave me the name of the city. So in this example, I'll just say Omaha, Nebraska. And we'll say that we're going to go as far as Lincoln, Nebraska. That's the state capital here in Nebraska. So if it did not like an address or city that I put in, it would turn red. But in this case, obviously, it's green. So it likes me. It says it's valid. And the buffered route is how far off of center do I want to go? Do I want to go 1 block? Do I want to go 3 blocks? Do I want to go a half a mile? It will do a maximum of 15 miles. So that would be 15 miles north and 15 miles south of that interstate, or east-west, whichever way that interstate's running. So in his case, we did 5 miles because he figured that those places would be located close enough to exit ramps and on ramps on the interstate that he'd find them easily within a 5-mile distance north or south. We'll just do, in our example, we'll just do 0.3. So 3 blocks on either side of this interstate, and then I just create my buffered route. And then it will calculate how many businesses, in this case there's 113 of those businesses along that route. And then what he wanted to do was, it's one thing to say, okay, I've got 100 here, where are they? So then what we did in his case is we said done, then we went to view our results. There's my 113. And then we just came back to the heat map and put them on the density map. And whenever you do that, it'll always start off with this view, and you kind of have to shape it so that it conforms. But eventually it will allow me to drill into that area. And I can have those all laid out on my map. And that's exactly what he was doing. So we found 18 locations along this interstate system, and he thought it was going to be about 130 miles worth of driving for him in that case, but he wanted to be able to just go boom, 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 and write down the list. So neat way to look at what it is that you're ultimately going to be starting with. Any questions on any of those tools? Remember, these things can also be used in a variety of our modules.
There's a question about the buffer route. Is the
Yes.
buffer route always in blocks, or how do you change it?
So in this example, I did 0.3 for 3 blocks, but if I want miles, I just put in 1 or 3 or up to 15. Any questions? Okay, let's do this. I'm going to go back to my results. I can always get back to my results. I'm going to revise this. I mentioned earlier, and this might be something that you all would want to do, maybe to let these new businesses know about the library. You can put in, I could be putting in a particular address here if I wanted, and it always defaults to this formatted where you have to put in the directional. I like the free form myself. I'm kind of prejudiced towards this. It's just a much simpler process, but sometimes you have to do formatted if you have a lot of pre and post directional information you need to fill in. But I use that free form, and then simply we could do, we can drop my address in there, and we'll do Omaha, Nebraska. I don't want that. And there's my Omaha. And then what you can do is say, okay, so from this address, in fact, I should have done that from the, skip this idea. I'm going to do it from the radius. So this could be the library, for example. And I'll do the zip code. And I'm going to say number of miles. So in other words, I want to find out about these businesses within a number of miles of this address. So this, like I say, could be the library's address. And I'll do 5 for 5 miles. Otherwise, it'd be 5.5 if I wanted to do 5.5 miles. And I'll say, show me businesses that have been around for 1 year within a 5.5 mile radius of that address. So in this case, I have 261 new businesses to my community around this address within a 5 mile radius of my address. So if I wanted to maybe do a mailer to these businesses to let them know about the fact that I'm down the street and I offer this, that, or the other thing, I could certainly do that. So know that that's available. Questions on any of the business? Otherwise, I want to show you some of the consumer modules.
I don't see any questions
Okay.
in the queue now.
Actually, let's do the jobs and internships real quick. This one's really simple. Again, we'll come to a quick search page. I could do a job title search. I could do a keyword. Maybe I want sales training. Or I could look for a particular company in any given city, state, or zip code. Most of the time, people are in the advanced search, and there are some great resources here with the job resources. I happen to love this one. This is through the Department of Labor. and it is jam-packed with information. So everything from skill assessments, interest assessments, etc. So just depends on what your patron may need. But there is just a wealth of information just in this one option. So know that that's available. But most of the time, people are in the advanced search. So if I'm looking, maybe I'm looking for a manufacturing opportunity. So there's manufacturing management, manufacturing engineer, manufacturing production. Maybe that's what I want. Then all I have to do is select the job type, meaning full-time, all the way down to internship or temporary. So I'll do full-time. I always encourage patrons, if they're going to use a salary, do it both ways. Do it one with salary and one without, because they're going to exclude a lot of potential opportunities by including a salary, because so many of these listings don't have a salary on them. The default location is always going to be 25 miles. I could do it from within a mile if I wanted to. Let's just do 10 miles. And I can put in my city, state, or zip code. I'll just use that zip. And then the age of that job, it could be any time, all the way since yesterday. So let's look at manufacturing over the last 3 days within 10 miles of this particular zip code. There are 20 opportunities that have been identified as manufacturing of some sort within the last 3 days. Where you see the listings on the left-hand column, those are all the listings that came to us through Indeed. In the center under company name, those are all of our records for these various companies. Now, where there are an underlined blue hyperlink, I can get to their record. If I don't see one, like this Universal Pure or Smithfield Foods, etc., if I don't see that, I should write that business name down and then look for it using the US Business Database as a one-off. But this is what I'm going to get when I select. So I think it's this one on Abbott. Yeah, that's the verified record. So this is Airlight Plastics Company. There's all the job openings that they have available. I can find out what this particular business does. There's their primary SIC code. There is, in fact, a business profile with this particular record. They do fairly well for themselves. There are 1,000 employees at this location. My goodness, huge. There's their management directory. So if I'm going to be sending in a resume, I might want to look and see if there's, oh, there is. There's Jack here is as an HR executive. I might want to put on my cover letter something specifically to Jack about my capabilities in this particular business. I could look at company news to learn some information about that company, etc. I could also, I'm going to cross my fingers and come down here to their competitors report, and let's see if this will launch for me. Oh, yes. So I can pull up their list of competitors for a couple of reasons. Number one, to understand who their competitors are, but also maybe I want to go to this particular record or this design plastics record. So I could go to that record, number one, to find out if they had any job openings, but also to learn a little bit about them so that if I do get that particular opportunity to go for an interview, I can speak intelligently not only about their business, but about their the businesses that they compete against. So that can be incredible data to have available. And I can always get back to that Airlight record by selecting back. So
Um,
it is really that simple. Yes, question.
there is a question about the results screen for the
Yes.
job and internship search. Why would some of those company links not be clickable? Does that mean
Maybe we
something?
couldn't. Yep, great question. Maybe maybe some of these companies are in fact staffing agencies, so we wouldn't have an address to link to. Or in that listing, there just wasn't enough information for us to be able to say, yeah, we're confident it's this location. So then we don't make that link. Great question.
And we're coming into our final few minutes. So
I don't want to do that. I want I, I want to show one thing, one more thing, because I'm thinking about the library. So these new movers, and whether it's for the library's purposes or that of a business that is reaching out to the library for some help as it relates to new opportunities or new potential customers, this US New Movers is incredible. Again, we're going to come right to the quick search page. I'll go to the advanced search right away. And we're just going to do, give me a zip code out there, Andrea. Any zip code.
08618.
08618.
Yes.
And we're going to say that, show me all those people that have moved, and I'll say from move distance to time frame, and we'll say from at least 50 miles away. That's that way, and we could change this up. It could be 25, it could be 15, it could be 10, whatever. But this way we avoid those people that are moving across the street or down the block. And we'll say 2,000 miles. It always defaults to the last 6 months. It could be as recent as last week or within the last year. Let's just for the heck of it, look and see if there's anything in the last 3 months. So there are 23 new records in that zip code in the last 3 months. So during the pandemic, people have moved to this area from at least 50 miles away all the way up to 2,000. Let's look at this record. So this person moved from 397 miles away to come into your community, and they're in Trenton there. There's their physical address. We've got some estimated home income, estimated ages, and then that census tract information. So each record is going to be set up, it's that simple. That could be awfully valuable. You know, it does, we don't have the housing type available on this one, but if I go back to my results or to my query, I can come in here to home type, and I can say, maybe I sell real estate, so I would like to look at renters. Are any of these 23 renters? 8 of them are renters. That would be the audience that I would want to reach out to and send them my business information about my real estate company. So that could be, that's real easy to do. If you have service people, that they could be landscapers, yard maintenance, home painters. They would love to know about the confirmed or the probable homeowners, and they could perhaps pitch their services. We know that when people move into a new home, a new used home, that chances are a certain percentage of them are either going to paint the interior or the exterior. I could get all that information pretty darn easily. So, and notice I've got the heat map here, I've got the charts here available to me, and of course I can download that information. Questions? I went through that part kind of quickly. Darn it.
Time flies when you're having fun.
And there's so much, you know, whether I'm talking about brand new business filings, standard white pages. Consumer lifestyles, a lot of folks are using the consumer lifestyles. It's populated with data like dog lovers. I was not in that database when I first moved back into Omaha some 10 years ago now, and my dog became ill. Took it to the vet, found out that the dog food I was feeding him, they'd changed the formula and he couldn't palate it. So the vet said, do you have a Petco or a PetSmart near you? I went to the Petco and signed up for a PALS membership. 2 months later, I'm in the database as a dog lover. So, yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, so I think every time I attend one of these sessions, I go in and I check out the information on myself. Accurate.
And some folks aren't listed in there at all. And they go, why aren't I in there? Well, they've flown just enough under the radar that nobody has identified them in those potential categories.
Yep.
So they're not there.
Well, this has been packed with great information. If anyone has any lingering questions or something else that wasn't covered, you can go ahead and type it into the box. Otherwise, there is another session on June 3rd at 10:30 a.m. if you would like to sign up for that. Bill, you're pretty much going to be covering the same thing though, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
So if you wouldn't mind giving them my email address or even my direct dial, they can reach out to me at any time, and I'd be happy to assist with any kind of searches they wanted to do. It's
okay.
bill.carlson@infogroup.com or 402-836-1243.
I will make sure that that is emailed out
Perfect.
along with a recording from today's session in case there was
Perfect.
something that you needed to see one more time. Also, as a reminder, if you are interested in hosting Bill as a presenter for your library to provide this information to the public, there is a form. I will make sure that that goes out as well. You can request that training. And Naomi Torres-Velez, I didn't get to introduce her because she was frantically working on the evaluation form that is now getting sent out for this session. So Naomi is also your point person at the State Library for coordinating training for the public, for ReferenceUSA. And if you have any other questions about training for your library patrons or things like that, you can let her know as well. I'll make sure that her contact information is in that email too. And then, Bill, there's one more question for you. The webinar in the Learning Center is available for patrons?
It is, yes. Patrons and or staff, you bet.
Okay, great. So Naomi has sent the link to the evaluation form that will also be going out in the email. So if you would be so kind as to fill that out and let us know if there's anything that wasn't covered that you are interested in learning more about. From a couple of the questions, it sounds like we might need to do a session about helping job seekers with ReferenceUSA. Let's maybe get into some specific population groups, so we'll explore that.
Absolutely. And I would point out, like with our U.S. healthcare, you will find doctor's office information under the U.S. business database. This is going to be populated with information about that doctor. So where did they go to school at? Where are they licensed at? Do they accept new patients? Do they accept Medicaid? What is their primary and secondary specialty? All of that type of information is going to be found under the healthcare. And we're seeing a lot of phone calls and emails that are coming in specific to that or those kinds of services. So know that that's available.
Great. Like I said, I learned something new every time. So thank you very much for your time today, Bill.
Thank you all.
And
appreciate
to
it.
everyone who signed in and participated, thank you very much. Expect an email coming tomorrow with some follow-up information in the recording, and otherwise have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.